friends, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Wheat and I'm an oil painter. I've been a painter and an instructor for about 28 years. So we're so glad to have you. It is one of my most favorite times of the year. It's pumpkin season and that's one of my favorite things to paint. So that's what we're going to work on today. We're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of clear-cut lessons on the 5 tone values, using a color and its complement for lifelike looking shading and all that. So it's gonna be really fun. So glad you've joined me, and get comfortable, get a cup of tea, get a cup of coffee, and let's hang out for an hour or so. Thanks. Alright, so let's take off on this painting. I had a hard time finding a still life model of this type of pumpkin, so I'm going to just work from a pumpkin painting I already have done. So first of all, I was cleaning off my palette and I thought it might be helpful to see how to clean it off. I've got a lot of paint on here from previous classes, so I just use a razor blade and I just scrape it off, and that helps clean up the palette really handy. And I use a little bit of turp or alcohol to finish the process. A nice sharp razor blade does a great job. That's the nice thing about glass. You're not going to gouge your palette. You can just slip it right off of this glass. Sometimes I think my palettes turn out pretty, not because of skill, just because of happenstance. And the colors, the variations, it's kind of a record of the colors I use in my painting. And I think some of my palettes turn out better than some of my paintings, I've been tempted to think. So I will just get a little turp on here and continue to clean it up. Okay, so we're going to run through our brushes really quickly. I have my 2 coarse bristle brushes that I'm blending. I keep them dry because they pick up way too much turp. And then we have our soft bristle brushes. We've got our big flat here, our little flat, and our large round brush, and our tiny round brush here. And our palette knife, of course, for our color mixing. Some artists use these just for the painting itself, and I love those kind of paintings. I've just never done one. So I'm going to choose a color to do my sketching, and I think I'll pull out this yellow ochre because it's a color that won't fight me later as I go. I won't have to use extra paint to cover it up. It's not terribly staining, so the yellow ochre works pretty well for that. And I'm going to grab my large round brush and get that wet. And then go right into this color and start sketching my pumpkin in. Now this guy's pretty big. He takes up a majority of the space, but he's off center. So I think we'll make his center about here. That can change as we go. I don't want his bottom coming down any more than that. And as I look at the painting, his top is closer to the edge of the canvas than his bottom is near the edge of the canvas. That's just a way to create variety and continue to create interest in the painting. So that's important. That's kind of where I start. The basic shape of something, but then also how far it is away from the edge of the canvas. So we've got our top edge and bottom edge figured out. Now I want to be sure he doesn't come over any closer to the side of the canvas than this, because we wouldn't want him to come and touch the edge. That would be called a tangent, and that's a confusing spot. And if you frame your canvas when you're done, you don't want the frame, which will cover a 1/4 inch or so, you don't want it to cover up part of your painting. So kind of get a rough judgment on measuring my distance between the center of my pumpkin and the edge. And here's my measurement. I put the end of my brush handle on this line and my thumbnail on this center line. And now I will measure it. So we have the same measurement here. So that's approximately what I'm looking for. This is a painting, not a math experiment. So it's all relative to each other, right? It's in relation to what we just did. So here's my center point. And I think my stem's going to live about here. And yeah, I think I'm kind of liking that. He may grow a little bit. He'll have to grow this way if he's going to grow at all. So I'm going to draw in the ribs because I think it's nice when you're starting a painting to sketch it in. Even though you're going to paint over it, it's really nice to have kind of a practice the shape. So let's take a look at sketching this guy in. So as I'm sketching this pumpkin, I'm thinking about where these lines need to be to look believable. So they originate at the top of the pumpkin and they end at the bottom, the button end of the pumpkin. So that tells us they need to wrap around. What we would not want is to draw these lines perpendicular, straight up and down, and them to be equidistant from each other. That would look like bars of a jail cell. So we want to think about where they start, where they stop, and the fact that the ribs that are right in front are going to look wider. And as we travel toward the ribs, toward the edge of the pumpkin, they're going to reduce in size. And that will lend itself to the illusion we're creating, because that's all we've got, right? We have a flat two-dimensional canvas and paint, but we need to make it look three-dimensional. So that's the trick. We'll throw in our table line just for good measure. And the cast shadow of the light is kind of from above. This was a north light painting I did. So the window was behind the pumpkin, so the light falls this way. And since the pumpkin is on this side, we usually don't have something off to the side unless we have something to balance it, but we have a few pumpkin seeds to balance it, which seems strange, but I think compositionally it works. All right, so now we're going to think about our background and what we need that to be. It looks pretty purplish, so I think we're going to grab, I don't think I need a different blue. I think I want my, let's just try what we have. I've got ultramarine blue here. So I'm going to try mixing ultramarine blue. And paint dries from the outside in. That's why there's a skin on top. So got ultramarine blue. And it's pretty violet. So I think I'm going to use some of this alizarin crimson. That's why you have to take the skin off. Why there's a toughness. Kind of a peachiness underneath, so let's try to use our large square bristle brush, and let's start massing in this background and see what we can find here. It's very purpley. I think I want to lay down an underpainting of some of this warmth though first before we just have a straight up blue background. So I'm going into the transparent oxide red just with my brush, and I just want to see if we can just mix the two. Yeah, that's working. See how you can see the canvas weave? That means I have too much thinner. I need more paint if I want coverage. I mean, if you want that look, that's great, but I want a little more coverage. So yeah, I think that might work. Let's see, I think we'll put a little more of the violet, the ultramarine blue, and alizarin crimson in. And see what we get. Pretty dark, but it's getting more purpley. Let's throw a little some Terra Rosa in there and see. That might be just the thing. It's a little more opaque. So use that with the blue. Very dark. It's just thinking. You get it up here, you've got to judge what you think of it. So I'm jumping back into the ultramarine with the alizarin crimson. I think we need more blue. Like Helen Van Wyck said, a record is a painting. A painting is a record of a series of corrections. So that's the truth. I'm adding a little white. It's just too dark. Yeah, I think that's more what I'm wanting to lighten it up a little bit. Got a real nice feel of variety. And I'm going to go ahead and paint into these, in between these ribs, to prepare the area for when I come in later and put them in. I don't want them to have to grow simply because I didn't make it cover the canvas well enough. Yeah, I'm liking all this. This is working, I think. So I think we'll just keep up with these colors and see what we can get. Painting into the pumpkin. I think it's kind of yummy. Look at all those crazy colors. I like a background with a little variety. I don't want it to look too flat. I think the eye enjoys a little vibrancy and movement of the brushwork. I'm liking the interplay between the purples and the blues and the dark oranges and everything. I think it looks nice. And then a little white just to bring it up a little bit from being so opaque. My paint's breaking. You can see the weave of the canvas, and I'm looking for coverage, so I'm going to add a little more turp to my paint and get it to cover better. So I'm going to throw some warms in through there. I'm taking advantage of the paint that's there. When I put white in it right here, it felt like too much, so I just jumped down here where there was more paint already and spread it around. It'll mix with what's on there. So I want it a little darker in through there. We can come back and revisit it if we need to, but I kind of like to have it about where I want it. I'd rather not have to come back and revisit it, so let's see. think that's interesting. So we may stop there, rinse out our brush, and start our table. So we're going to start on our table, and it's kind of peachy looking. So I'm going to start with this color, I think, and okay, see, this is a benefit of having the background still wet and painting the background down into the table a little bit. When you come up with the table color, then it just automatically is soft, and soft lines go back and hard lines come forward. So we want this to be soft. So I'm just going to paint the periphery because we like to keep the brighter spots toward our focal point and the outer edge to be a little darker. So I'm going to go ahead and get the canvas toned the direction I want it. This is kind of a golden, very warm, cozy painting. And I'm going to do my trick. This table line looks higher than the other one, so let's see. So I put the end of my brush handle at the bottom of my canvas, my thumbnail at the table line. Let's compare it. Yeah, this table line is higher. I think I'll just lift this side just for the simplest way to fix it. I'm real good at making my table lines run downhill. I think that's pretty normal. It's a gallery wrap canvas, so we can just paint the sides. We don't have to frame it if we don't want to, if we like it when we're done. So go ahead. So I don't mind that my paint's kind of thin here. I'm going to go ahead and paint the whole canvas, because then the shadow area will look like it belongs on the table. If we come in and paint the shadow area a different color, it'll look foreign, like something's not quite right. We'll worry about its bottom when we put the cast shadow in later. Alright, so I'm going to put a little more white on the table right now, keeping out of the way of the cast shadow area. I'm going to start kind of thinking about where that's going to go. And I like my brightest area to kind of be through here. As it goes back, I don't want this table edge to be as bright as up here, because if that's not quite as bright, it'll look like it's going back. You can see that with the color that we put on, it kind of toned the canvas. So now when we come back with this, it looks nice, as opposed to if we hadn't toned the canvas, it would just be, you wouldn't really see it on here. Hi Bear, what you doing? Huh? There's Bear. Hey, what you doing, baby? You're a good boy. I can't hold you right now, baby. Not right now, baby. So usually, like, as bright as I like my tables, I come back and do that later. I don't do that initially. So we can kind of start seeing there's a halo happening around this area, and that's what we want. So we'll come back and fiddle with that more in a little bit. Okay, so we're gonna start mixing our colors for our pumpkin. It's like, I just gotta mix it to tell you what to do. I don't really know, so I never know. I just have to think it out, and this is where we think. This is our palette, and this is where we think. So so let's see. Let's put a little cadmium yellow deep, and I will put all my paints that I use in a list in the description box. So, and all my brushes and everything. So let's start with this cadmium yellow deep. Definitely want some transparent oxide red. Next door to that. Definitely going to be white. Since it's a North Light painting, the top where the light is striking will be cool. So there'll be quite a bit of white to make it cool, but that's why the body will be quite warm, because it's all reflected light. And that's what we try to paint. We try to paint the balance of cool and warm. So if the light is warm, then the shadows, body shadows, should have a coolness to it. And if the light is, cool, we should have warmth in the body shadows. So that kind of plays into the ideas of complementary color and balance. And we are, as artists, just paint the effects of light. And so we use what we know about light in the color wheel. On the color wheel, there's yellow or orange, and across the color wheel, opposite to orange, is blue. So we will use that strategy to our advantage to make our body shadows look more realistic. So we are going to try this color out on our pumpkin and see what we think. So I've got some, it's pretty peachy. So we've got transparent oxide red with white, and it's very orangey. So let's just start to carve this in. And usually when you see the highlights on something, for me, as a painter, that's usually the last thing I did. So like the first thing that catches your eye in my paintings is usually the last thing I did. So let's close in on this one and take a peek at our pumpkin. I'm not worrying about my stem right now. And I use the corner of my brush a lot, the outside corner here. I usually draw with that. I don't just come in with the full edge of my brush. I come in and then I use that corner to draw with. That helps me sneak up on the shape. And when I'm in doubt, I paint it smaller than I see it, because it's much easier to make it grow than to come in with background color and have to trim it down. So, go cautiously is my advice. And see, so I love how my paint is mixing with the background, and it's making a really nice turning edge. If this color was straight up to the background and they just blended right against each other, it would look like we cut out our pumpkin and pasted it. This way, with the color of the pumpkin mixing with the background, it gives it a turning edge. Makes it look like it goes back. Needs to be a little flatter, not so rounded. I'm sure there's a lot of variations in nature, so I could probably get away with it, but alright, so we'll start on his neighbor here. So I'm using cadmium yellow deep with some white and some transparent oxide red, which is quite orangey. Yeah. This type of pumpkin is a very peachy colored pumpkin. I'm using this outer corner of this brush here to kind of sneak up on this edge out here. And beautiful. It's already, see how the background kind of slipped in, and it doesn't look flat, it looks rounded. That's just a bonus. Sometimes that happens. So, and these up here are going to be the lightest, because that's, like I said, it was a north light. It was a window behind my pumpkin. So I'm going to add a little more white to the color I have, just to the tops here. Using that corner again. Now I'm going to use this corner to round out this edge. Now let's do his brother over here. I'm going to bring him over a little bit more. Okay. So this is the lightest part, the light striking, but then this rib kind of rolls into shadows. So I'm going to add darker colors over here where it rolls into the shadows. And this is going to naturally kind of get darker, which I love. So there's two separate colors right here, the shadow and the light side, and I don't want to use the big brush and then obliterate it. So I'm using the small flat, and I'm just going to cross hatch the two. Because I want to make it blend, but I don't want it to go totally away. So I cross hatch, I zigzag this way, and then I brush it the opposite way. There. Made it look kind of rounded, so that's cool. Alright, I like it. So now that edge is a little harsh to me. It wants to stand out a little much, so I'm going to come in with this big blender brush and very gently pull it and wipe it off each time you make a pass because it's going to pick up paint. So I just want to break that edge a little bit, because if it's soft, now I'm going to come from the top. If it's soft, it'll look like it's going back to me. Hey man, everything I do is what I think, and you know, not everyone might agree with me, so this is just my thing and what's worked for me. And whatever works for you is cool too. So I think I want this area to be a little softer. It's just a little harsh, so I'm going to use this blender brush to just pull this in here. Yeah, I just like that a little better. Okay, so like I said a minute ago, this tops of all these ribs, it's like a circle right through here is going to be the lightest area. So let's go ahead and do this guy. Get his lights on. Need to dip my brush in the turp because my paint's not flowing. And we'll get him settled here. I'm going to go ahead and get some of his darker color in here. I'm using transparent oxide red. Yay, I love it. So it's blending with that background. I really like that because we want this edge to be nice and soft. And it's not a perfectly smooth edge. This is not a pot. It is a, you know, the pumpkins have different little spots on them. They're not perfectly smooth, so that makes us happy as painters. And this color is mixing with the table color we laid in. So we like that because it's giving it a natural reflection. So we're going to do the same thing on this guy. Let's throw on a little more body shadow while we're at it, I think. Where the seam is. A little more. Okay. Since we have body shadow color, let's go ahead and paint him in here. And we'll blend that with the next color we put on. So we just continue with this process as we go. We start with the lighter color on top, and then we start adding the body color, and then the body shadow, and then we'll have the reflection. We'll save the highlights for last, the brightest spots on top. But yeah, we just treat each rib as a separate piece. To me, I think it works better that way. If I just painted this whole thing, I might lose my way a little quicker, which is easy to do. So I'm just going to continue on with this, and just hang with me, and yeah, we'll get the rest of this blank canvas covered.
Se você disser